Good morning. Thank you for joining this episode of Creative Real Estate Ownership. I'm really happy to be here with my friend and colleague, Carlos Plazola, owner of BuildZig, a development firm based here in Oakland, California. And I invited Carlos here to talk to me about some work he's doing in the city of Oakland. Carlos was my construction manager on a development project, my biggest development project, where I converted a 6-unit building in East Oakland to 12 units. So it was a classic urban infill project, and learned about the development process and was challenged by it. And Carlos shepherded it to the finish line, and now we're friends, and I'm always interested to hear your ideas and what you're involved in. And so today we're going to talk specifically about Carlos's involvement in some development opportunities in Oakland for low and middle income folks. Specifically, we're going to talk about this ADU grant program, and there's just so many pieces to it. And this is really this is the section of the series of videos that's really about exploring the people and companies that are really addressing affordability in the Bay Area, and coming up with really creative solutions to get people new housing, safe housing, green housing, in order to house family members or have rental units, build wealth, pass that wealth on to the next generation. And so this is a program. There's a series of programs. You'll tell us a little bit about the overarching spirit of what you're involved in right now, and then we'll talk some nuts and bolts about this program specifically for ADUs. So thank you for joining me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Happy to be here, Josh.
Yeah.
Look forward to this.
Yeah, great. So tell me a little bit about, over the last few years, you've been building ADUs, right? And for various levels of income for folks, but you're finding more often than not, it's higher income people that can afford to build an ADU, right?
Yeah.
In thinking about building ADUs for lower to middle income people, what has been your experience in terms of making that jump from serving higher income folks to serving lower to middle income folks? Obviously money is the first answer, but what are you seeing in terms of how to make that happen for everybody? Because we both believe in ADUs, and we've even called it the democratizing of real estate investing, right? It's an opportunity for the little guy to get his foot in the door and build. And so talk to me about your experience kind of in the kind of for-profit ADU world, and then why you want to kind of move some of your energy and resources into this new program that's in Oakland, and kind of the spirit of it in general.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll start first with a little bit of the why.
Mm-hmm.
In my life in general, I've always kind of lived at the nexus of equity and environmentalism. So I have a background in environmental science, but I've also been a social justice activist. And then in 2006, I was really called to build. So I started building. Mm-hmm. And so I always look for that intersection between equity, environmentalism, and building. And if I try to imagine what good future cities look like with mixed income and cultures, vibrant cultures and economies, then we have to figure out how to build in ways that enable low income and middle income people to build wealth and income. So that's kind of the why. What I learned most recently in the last 5 years, I've been doing ADUs.
Yep.
And what I've learned in that process is that they are really great tool. And ADUs are small cottages you put in your backyard or in your home or in your garage.
Junior ADUs being you build within the envelope of your existing home, a basement build out, and whatnot. Yep.
Garage. And then you get your detached ADU, which you can put in your backyard. And what I've learned in the last 5 years is that these are really great tools for building wealth and income, supplementing your household income, and then building wealth and passing it on to your children. Or great ways of building units that your, say, in-laws or parents can move into when they're aging,
Yeah.
or your children when they come back from school, or if your children get in trouble, maybe lose their jobs, just a way of sort of supporting your family. And in the last 5 years, we've built dozens of these, but primarily in wealthier communities. And we've built just one in a lower income community. It was for a retired teacher, and she had a little bit of retirement funds, and we did it at a really competitive price for her. And what we found is that the reason that we are having a hard time building these in lower income areas, one is the increase in interest rates has made money much more expensive.
Yeah.
So that became a barrier. But also in lower income areas, you may not meet the loan requirements. So to get a home equity line of credit, which is how many people build these, you need both equity and then you need the income to justify the extra debt service.
Yes.
And in lower income areas, you may have neither of those. You may have a small amount of equity in your home, or even if you have a good amount of equity, you may not have the capacity to service the debt.
Yeah.
A lot of the lenders require that these ADUs are seasoned for 2 years, which means that you have collected rent for them for 2 years before they will give you the value for them, and give you the debt service credit for them.
Like it to bundle in a home loan with the ADU.
Right. So you can say, well, I'm going to get $2,000 in rent for this ADU. And then the bank says, okay, well, we're going to count that as part of your income. So they won't do that until you've been able to collect rent for 2 years.
Okay.
But we know that in places like Oakland, particularly in East-West Oakland, where some of our lower populations live, this is where we need housing the most. Because what happens in a lot of these communities is they might have a family member who loses their job, has a hard time getting another job. We know that incarceration rates in these communities are higher, so it's harder to come out of prison and then go and find a job.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things that are barriers to housing for many people in East and West Oakland.
Yes.
So building housing in these areas becomes that much more important. So we started to investigate how we could possibly build high volumes of ADUs in low-income areas. We looked around the country to see who's doing innovative things. By way of example, Eagle County, Colorado, just some random county in Colorado, is giving out low-interest loans, I think at 3%. So subsidized loans to low-income communities to help inspire ADUs. State of California is giving $40,000 grants for ADUs for the pre-construction costs.
Yep.
And so we started looking at all these things and saying, well, what if we just bundled all of these programs and targeted those census tracts where we have high home ownership rates and large African-American populations. And why African-American populations? Because in America, where we have extraction of resources from lower income communities, that is pay low wages, underinvest in education, underinvest in infrastructure, underinvest in security, parks, all of that, we see that underinvestment, particularly along racial lines where African-American communities are impacted more. So if we can address this on the front lines of the most impacted people in a capitalist system, then we can address it across the board. So we're really looking at high census tracts with high populations of African-Americans and high home ownership rates, and then targeting these programs, those to help stabilize communities, particularly in areas near Silicon Valley where we get a lot of economic pressures around gentrification. So
yes,
this is really a tool or a way to sort of block, if you will, the pressures of gentrification in communities that still have high homeownership rates in Black communities.
Yeah.
And that's what this program is intended to do.
So, and when you say this program, are we talking about the Cal Home Ownership Program, or are we talking about something bigger?
Something bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Cal Home is, and we'll talk about that shortly, but
Yeah.
Cal Home is just a source of funds. But what we're talking about here is organizing with various community leaders in Oakland to adopt this as an approach to stabilizing neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's interesting, if we go to a city meeting on affordable housing allocation, and which I did go to, and I asked the question, as you're targeting these affordable housing funds, particularly under a program called Measure U funds, this is for affordable housing, a bond that we passed in Oakland, and I asked city staff, is there anything about this program that helps stabilize low-income neighborhoods? And the answer was no.
How would you define stabilizing low-income neighborhood?
Creating a counter pressure to pressures of gentrification.
Okay.
That is helping people build wealth, income, improve their homes.
Right.
For example, a lot of seniors who have owned homes for 40 years are suffering from lack of weatherization. So
Right.
their heating bills are going up. They may live in cold homes because they can't pay the bill for a high heating bill. And so it's just underinvested. And so the idea is to target specific census tracts with funds for home improvements for weatherization, lower heating bills, increase the value of the home, ADUs, and then to really bring in minority contractors who live in the area to do all this work, so that you're sort of recycling the funds within the neighborhood.
Right.
So this program that I mentioned is really an approach that more and more leaders in Oakland are getting behind to stabilize communities.
Who in Oakland are you finding a receptive audience? Who in Oakland is interested in this? Are you finding resistance from the city of Oakland for doing this? I mean, it sounds great. Obviously, with any kind of these programs, like where does the money come from? Right, is obviously a huge question. There's philanthropy, there's donations, there's government, state funds, there's federal funds, there's all kind of funding sources out there. So, two-part question. One, what are you finding in terms of like city government, in terms of their receptiveness or not to this? And then what's your thinking on funding?
So about 5 years ago, I really started beating this drum when I saw that all of these ADUs were being built in wealthier communities. So their property values were going up more than the cost of the ADU. Their income was going up substantially more than the loans. So I'm thinking, wow, these people are pretty smart to benefit from this. How do we shift this over to lower income, middle income communities so they too can enjoy the wealth building and the income generation and stabilize their own home? And so that's when I started researching. I called the city staff, numerous times. I've been beating this drum now for a good 4 years with the city. And it has gone largely ignored until just recently, which I'll speak to. And I think the reason it goes ignored is the way that, I used to work in the city of Oakland. And what happens is that it really becomes about the path of least resistance. How do we get the money in and out as quickly and easily as possible without drama, without risk, without risking my job if I'm a city staff person? And what that means is you just keep funneling money to the existing programs.
Status quo.
And even if those programs are far more expensive, so an affordable housing developer, it costs them twice as much as it costs a private builder to build anything residential, just because they have a bunch of lawyers and consultants involved, and the intention there is to just mitigate their risk down to like near zero. So a lot of this game is about mitigating risk. City doesn't want risk. City staff doesn't want risk. Affordable housing developers don't want risk, and that just means it drives up the cost of ADUs for regular people. As a builder, I'm used to taking risk. Most private builders are. Risk is just part of the game. And we build sophisticated systems to try to mitigate our risk, and then sometimes we eat it. Right? Okay, so and no one's there to rescue us.
Right.
That's why we're the heroes. Anyways, unsung heroes. Josh, you included.
Right.
So for the most part, as I've been beating this drum, I haven't found much positive reception in the city of Oakland because they just want to get the funds out. And so I've sent them, Eagle County's low interest loan program. I've said, why are we not getting more of the state grants for Oakland residents, the state $40,000 pre-con grants, and largely ignored until a staff member in the city of Oakland approached us about doing a low interest affordable ADU in East Oakland, and that was Jean Casey. And I'll say her name because I'm really proud of what she's done and happy that she's in there pushing. And so we are building the first ADU under that low interest loan program with the city, and it's the only one. It's a prototype. We're building it for $150,000, and it will be standalone detached ADU. It's a legalization of the existing garage.
Standalone garage. Not attached.
Separated garage.
Separate garage.
And it's and so we're taking that and we're legalizing it and creating an ADU. It's a great program. We're gonna have a press conference in 2-3 weeks. We'll be done.
We'll be there.
And it's we just wanted to show that it can be done. We subsidized it with our own fees, taking much lower fees than we otherwise would have. But we can do that because we make higher fees when we build for higher ADUs for higher income areas.
Sure. That's great.
So now the city has started to be receptive to this. I guess we've beat the drum long enough, and enough people are starting to recognize the value of this.
Yeah.
And so then, just a month ago, the state of California released a NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, for homeowners to take advantage of a very similar program to build ADUs, but they've allocated up to $250,000 per ADU, which we can do all day long and have enough to build brand new ADUs. So we're hoping the city of Oakland will apply for that and receive those grants.
Yeah.
And over the next year, we'll be building a team of people, including Association of Minority Contractors, people who train minority contractors, to build these.
Yeah, that's great. So when you say that the city has to apply for the grants, so the state makes these funds available, city has to meet a series of requirements to access those funds. Literally, they get a big chunk of money, a big pot of money comes over to the city of Oakland. It's earmarked for these services, right?
Yep.
They pay builders to build them. Talk to me about the homeowner's requirement to pay back. I mean, are these considered loans? Are they considered gifts, grants for the homeowner? And, you know, part of my, obviously with like government programs like this, there's just a lot of rules and regulations, right? And sometimes they can just choke out the spirit of the initiative itself, right?
Yeah.
Just because they're like, I have to do this, and then I have to stand on one foot, and then I have to tap my head, you know, right?
Yeah.
It goes on and on and on. How do you see this potentially working? And is it a loan for the homeowner? And if it's not, great.
Yeah.
If it is, how is it paid back? How do you see that kind of playing out? If City of Oakland, because I've heard City of Oakland also missing out on applying for grants in time, and just some of that kind of mismanagement stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you see that process going in terms of the city getting the money, and then how is it distributed, and what's the homeowner's responsibility?
Yeah, great questions, Josh. Yeah, this is the first time I've ever done anything with the city on the private side.
Okay.
And the reason is because of what you described.
Yeah.
That thing.
Right.
It's too complicated most often.
Yeah.
This one has been pretty straightforward, and I attribute that to Gene Casey, who's done a great job in sort of helping us get a clear process. Mm-hmm. But it's also because we just received the funds to build. We don't have to go and apply for capital stacks and 6 different layers of funding for affordable housing, which is what keeps this affordable. It's really simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
And so the way that the loans work is the loans are offered to the homeowners, the lower than regular interest rate. They are subordinated to their first loan.
Okay.
And in many cases, and I don't know the specifics of these because I think they're still going to roll that out, the specifics, but in many cases like this, the low interest loans are deferred interest.
Yeah.
And then the interest is waived if at the end of the term of the loan, the home is still rented at affordable 80% AMI or less. So if they meet certain terms, then they get the interest waived.
Okay.
And so that's a great benefit to the homeowner.
Yeah.
Upon sale of the home, I don't think there's restrictions on sale, but upon sale of the home, then they would pay the loan back.
Yeah. The principal.
The principal,
And potentially some interest if they haven't met those requirements.
Yeah. And what you're saying is key. The state, government in general has a way of complicating things and making them inaccessible to the everyday person.
Yes.
And that's part of the thing that we have to fix.
Right.
And again, it has everything to do with just trying to mitigate risk down to zero on the state and city part.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we all have to accept some risk to build more affordably.
Yes. So would you be in a position, so as the builder, would you be in a position to assist the homeowner as far as kind of understanding how it all works? Does the homeowner potentially have to take the initiative and understand all of this and go out there and get educated and figure this out and do a bunch of applications? Or is there some type of middleman like yourself or someone that you maybe would work with that would assist the homeowner in kind of getting through this process? Because that's intimidating too, right?
For sure.
And so...
Yeah, so this one that we're just completing now, the homeowner had to do very little learning curve. The city managed a lot of that for them, and then we managed the construction side of it.
Right.
For this other program, that will be a little bit more complicated because there's more elements to it. There's a home improvement for the main house component. There's
Yeah.
the ADU. We are building a team of people who will support. As I mentioned, there'll be one team member who will train minority contractors to build ADUs. We'll have others that train the homeowners on how to comply with city rental housing laws.
Yes.
And train the homeowners on that. We'll have others who will shepherd the homeowners through the process of obtaining the loan.
Great.
In collaboration with the city if the city does get the grant.
Yeah.
So the idea is to make this as easy as possible for the homeowner, recognizing they have other things in their life that they have to be doing, but they shouldn't miss out on these opportunities.
Great. Back to the loan subordination issue that you brought up. So, if there's a second loan, so in general, when you have your primary mortgage on your house, most of those lenders don't allow a second mortgage to be on the deed, right? Recorded against the house. Because they're like, if there's a second, you're more likely to default because you have that much more debt, and therefore you jeopardize that first position, is basically the lender's position, right? That's their fee, mitigating risk, right? Do you see a problem with primary lenders allowing a second loan to go on the house?
That could come up on occasion. My experience is a little different. My experience is that most large lenders like Chase, Wells Fargo, don't have issues with second loans as long as the homeowner can meet the debt service, which is where the income projections come in, and which is why the deferment of interest payments by the state is important, because then it allows people to meet the DSCRs, debt service coverage ratio. So some homeowners may be precluded because of that, but we're hoping most would not be.
Yeah, almost like a special carve-out is going to be probably possible, I would think, if the lenders are incentivized, or if there's pressure put on them, or there's just a lot of different forces at work, potentially. Good forces, right?
And I appreciate you raising that, because now we're talking about all the various barriers that are in place that prevent people in low and moderate income home districts, areas to take advantage of programs, and build wealth and income for their families.
Right. So in terms of the next big push, where are you kind of focusing your energy? So you have some interest from the city, you have this application of grants. What do you see as the next big kind of like push on your part to make this happen, and to also sell the larger vision?
Yeah. So we're definitely not relying on the Cal Home grants,
right,
or loans. So if the city doesn't get doesn't win the award, that's not going to stop us. What we're doing is building community groups, associations, building an alliance in community to push this kind of concept, so that we can encourage our assembly members, our senators, our local elected officials, regional financing agencies like Bay Area Housing Finance Agency to support programs like this. Again, for too long, the entire focus has been on building affordable rental. And so what we're doing is we're kind of creating this dystopian society future where we have wealthy homeowners, and then the only people who are of low and middle income are going to be renters.
Right.
And I don't think that's the kind of society that we really envision.
Right.
So the short-term solution of just building a bunch of rental housing feels good immediately,
right,
but long-term is not a strategy for a healthy city.
Right.
So we're organizing here in Oakland with many different organizations involved to advocate more for neighborhood stabilization, supporting homeowners, and building more housing stock in areas that are traditionally underinvested in.
Yeah. Talk to me about that stat. The reduction in African American population in Oakland was pretty shocking. The number you just shared with me.
Yeah. So 1980s, the African American population in Oakland was 47%. Today, it's a little less than 22%. So less than half.
Yeah.
And we know why that is. There's a lot of economic pressures. And then there's underinvestment in these communities. So if someone has an option of selling their home and leaving to a safer community for their children, they will. Others have simply been pushed out, could no longer afford their home, had to sell, perhaps wanted to buy here but can't afford it. And so we're seeing a decline in African American population. And if we look really at in a capitalist system, who the involuntary benefactors, I call them, those people who are involuntarily giving of their time to support a capitalist system that is being exploited. There's a strong correlation with race because it's easier to other people who are different than those who are generally the beneficiaries of capitalism.
Sure.
And so what we see then is an underinvestment in education in melanated communities, underinvestment in security, underinvestment in parks, underinvestment in housing.
Yeah.
And of course, lower wages due to racial issues.
Sure.
So all of these are factors that have sort of motivated me, at least, to really look at what's happening on the front lines of the war on people and capitalism, which is the Black community. And if we solve the issues there, work collaboratively to solve issues there, to stabilize communities, create healthier communities, then we'll solve them everywhere.
Right. And so census tract targeting means anybody in that census tract, right? So it's not necessarily just African American population or Latino population. It's
That's right.
kind of everybody.
That's right. Yeah.
Who's in that census tract, right, too. So there's going to be opportunities for all kinds of folks
Yes.
in these programs, ideally.
Yes.
But
Well, I mean, to be frank, you can't by law discriminate who gets the funds. So you can't say this is only for Black homeowners, because that goes against federal law.
Right.
But the negative impacts of capitalism have been borne disproportionately by the Black community. So I have no problem saying that I hope this program primarily supports Black homeowners.
Yeah.
But yes, we will not be able to discriminate who gets access to these.
Yeah. And same thing in Berkeley. I mean, I'm a Berkeley native in the African American population, and Berkeley has just really plummeted.
Yeah.
And it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing. And so.
Well, I moved to Oakland because of the beautiful, diverse community here.
Yeah, yeah.
And that included the Black community, the Latino community, Asian community, white community, all the beautiful diversity. And so, but then we just sort of watch it shift, just like in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And we don't bother to ask why it's happening.
Right.
But it's happening.
Yeah. As far as your plan, so this program is super interesting. I mean, I think that you're going to be, going kind of back to funding sources. Are philanthropies going to be considered as far as funding sources? The feds potentially? Yeah. Or any and all?
Any and all.
Okay.
Any and all. Yeah.
So that's going to be an open book.
Yeah. And for example, Bay Area Housing Finance Agency in 2024 had a ballot measure that they were about to place on the ballot for $10 to $20 billion for affordable housing. They had to pull it because there was a threatened lawsuit. And so they tabled it, and I believe they're bringing it back in 2026. So $10 to $20 billion, this program got even just a tiny percentage of that.
Right.
We'd be able to stabilize communities, threatened communities in Oakland.
Yeah.
So it's any and all of it, but the main gist is organizing for programs like this, and then advocating to our local assembly members and senators and regional agencies to start thinking about stabilizing communities, and then even potentially restoring populations, increasing populations through sort of a rematriation program, which is way down the line. Yeah. Families who lived here and were pushed out being able to come back and benefit from existing programs. Yeah. But all these things are down the road, and this is the bigger vision of creating healthier cities and more just cities. So that's the bigger vision.
That's terrific. In addition to this work that you're kind of working on, and you'll continue to do for-profit building, right? Yeah. Pay the bills. You enjoy it. Yeah. Right. But this is kind of animating your spirit a little more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the passion work.
Yeah.
This is not where I make profit. This is where I invest my profit into a good cause, because I find it rewarding to do things in life that are simply for the sake of caring. Yeah. And probably more rewarding than making a lot of money. Yeah. So So I do my other stuff where I build higher end homes as well. Sure. And that pays the bills and keeps things running.
Right. It's funny. I mean, we're of similar age, and there's that point where you're just like, I mean, obviously you've been doing good work. I've been doing good work in my life, but like there is that point where you're just, you need to kind of dig into that like voice inside of you, right? That's calling for something deeper and more meaningful and everything. You neglect that voice at your own peril, right?
That's right.
It's just like, so.
Yeah, you come to the realization, oh, wait, it's true. Money can't buy happiness.
Yeah, it's just not.
But
it's not the ruler, right?
But serving others and helping create a beautiful world does.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah. So that's great. Thank you so much for talking to me. I'm going to be following all of this. I'm going to want to talk to you again about it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, and congrats on these efforts, and the community appreciates it too.
Thanks.
So.
Come out to our event when we do the open house at this ADU.
I will. I'll be there.
All right. Cool.
All right. Thanks,
you.
Josh. All right.
All right.